following is my own true story from my personal experience. They do not speak on behalf of the United States Marine Corps or any other U.S. Marine.
In 2018, there was a murder investigation that uncovered an underground drug ring in which Marines were selling Sour Patch candy laced with LSD and heroin in 29 Palms. I was dragged into that investigation, and this is that story. Welcome to episode 12 of Marine Corps Chronicles, and a big thank you for hitting 80k subs. And due to the nature of this story, I need to make a quick disclaimer. I do not condone the sale or use of any illegal substances, nor was I distributing or using illegal substances in any way, shape, or form. Furthermore, these videos are not to make the Marine Corps look good or bad. These are just my stories, and honestly, if you really care that much about that, you should be more concerned about Marines selling candy laced with LSD and the big H. Speaking of which, let's get into the story, but first I need to set the scene. In June of 2018, a body was discovered in a shallow grave alongside the road at Joshua Tree National Park. Upon investigation, the murdered man, Henry Stange, was found to be a part of a love triangle with Marine officer First Lieutenant Curtis Lee Kruger and his Marine girlfriend. All three met as they were ham radio enthusiasts, with the Marine officer being a radio operator too. Apparently, this love triangle was a sex for drugs relationship between Stange and Ashley, and this is according to an article by the Marine Corps Times. The story goes that on the morning of the murder, the girlfriend, Ashley Stapp, texted Kruger that she was going to her mother's house, about a 2-hour drive or so from 29 Palms, in order to pick up some suitcases. Kruger was skeptical and texted back, "Suitcases? Seriously, let me find out you're doing drugs," and then requested and was granted permission to leave work in order to deal with family issues. That must be an officer only thing, by the way, because if you requested a day off to deal with family issues on the enlisted side, they'll have you cleaning toilets for a week. Kruger tracked Ashley's phone, and when he got to her mother's house, he found the house empty with Ashley's phone still left in there. He then went to Henry Stange's house. Again, they already had a prior history, and quoting from court documents, once inside the residence, Kruger unleashed a violent attack that left Henry with several sharp force injuries to his chest and neck, and numerous blunt force injuries that fractured and collapsed his skull and left him bleeding on the floor. After the murder, both Kruger and Ashley helped clean up the scene and drove the body to Joshua Tree National Park and buried it into a shallow grave. Kruger would be sentenced to a total of 18 years to life, with 3 years for an assault charge and 15 years for second-degree murder, sentences running consecutively. Ashley Stapp pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact and was sentenced to 309 days in jail and 3 years of probation. This murder investigation also ended up revealing an entire drug ring at 29 Palms, involving hundreds of people, although the exact number is debated, including a notable amount of people at the Marine Corps Communication Electronics School, which is also where I was soon to be. What you have to understand about 29 Palms, and keep in mind not everyone watching this knows stuff about the Marines or military in general, is that it has to be one of the, if not the worst base in the entirety of the United States military. And that is because it is in the middle of the desert with not much to do. Like, I knew people who would go out to Cathedral City, which was about an hour away from 29 Palms, and marry a stripper or an exotic dancer that they had met a week ago just so they could get some extra housing allowance pay, or so that they could not live in the barracks. That is a whole entire story, but yeah, people would be doing crazy shit because they hated living there. And as a soon-to-be field radio operator at a Bravo company in comm school, you were not allowed a car, and so people were losing their minds because you were so isolated from civilization. And the fact that there is a lot of empty desert to do and hide illicit things, shady shit would go down all the time. Now, when the initial big drug bust happened for the key ringleaders of the LSD-H gummies, I was not yet at 29 Palms, but I would arrive very soon after with the investigation still ongoing. Because like a hydra when dealing with drug distribution, you take off one head and two more appear. Regarding the initial drug bust that revealed everything, this is what I was told. Apparently, once the investigation was underway, one guy in a key group of ringleaders, I believe it was like 5 or 6 people, ended up telling on everyone else and avoided time in the brig, which is military prison, while everyone else involved in the initial group of ringleaders did end up going to, well, the brig. Things were just getting started, as not everyone buying these laced gummies were eating them. Many of them would resell them to other Marines, especially students at the Electronic Communications school, aka comm school. And it was especially hard catching people because, like mitosis, you can have one guy selling to another gal who, instead of taking it, resells it to another guy. And since this was comm school, there was a constant rotation of Marines going in and out. However, the immediate illicit activities had to stop because you don't have to be a podiatrist to figure out that you probably should not be resuming your drug dealings hot on the heels of the big ringleader drug bust. So for a few months, those with lace gummies were laying low, hiding their stashes, and the LSD heroin part was especially appealing to other Marines into that kind of stuff because there ain't shit to do in 29 Palms, and LSD and the H don't stay in your body for that long. Don't do drugs, by the way. And so while of course they could still catch you in a surprise PP or whatever examination to test for LSD, the risk was less than, say, puffing on that reefer, which stays in your system for a month. When this story takes place, I had a room close to the manager/duty hut, which is the place in charge of keeping an eye on the area, amongst other things, and had actually just gotten a new roommate. My previous two other roommates, who were pretty chill and boot camp buddies, actually I'm pretty sure they enlisted together, got busted for having alcohol in dry barracks. They were of legal age to drink, but obviously they weren't allowed alcohol in the barracks we were at, and so they both ended up getting NJP'd and moved. And NJP is a non-judicial punishment. These dudes, and I can't put them on blast because they took it on the chin, they both straight up own up to it, like, yeah, the drinks were ours, Ratmothy had nothing to do with that, and so hey, I'm not telling anyone to break the rules, but at least own up to it if you were caught, like those two. Less than a week from them getting moved out of my room, another Marine gets moved in, and he doesn't speak much. I'll call him Tuco. Tuco and I, we didn't have any problems with each other. We respected each other's spaces, dude kept to himself, and hey, we all need our quiet time, so no big deal. But the times we did get to talking, his story didn't make a lot of sense. Dude said he had been there for only 2 months, and then sometimes he would talk like he was there for many months, like, oh, last summer at 29 Palms, and I'd be like, oh, wait, weren't you only here for 2 months? And he'd be like, oh, no, I've got family here I was visiting. But then in a completely different conversation, he would tell me that he and his family wasn't from California. I don't know, I mean, things just didn't make a lot of sense. At the same time, I met Marines who thought that pouring hand sanitizer in their eyes would cure their pink eye, so I just chalked it up to be a crayon overdose or something like that. The first day, things start to get really strange. I remember it was still early in the workday because I remember we hadn't had our afternoon chow yet, when the sergeant in charge of me while I was in the holding platoon calls me to the side. No big deal. Bro was probably gonna have me hand wash his underwear or some shit, whatever. He tells me to go back to the barracks room and wait for further instructions. A little strange, but I was in a holding platoon waiting to pick up class, so at least I wasn't thrown onto a working party again. As I am walking towards my room, I see that the door is already open and Tuco is standing in front in parade rest in his green on greens, which is a little odd. I mean, like I said, this was still early in the day and we had different NCOs assigned to us, so maybe he was doing some PT or something like that. And for context, usually you'd be in your camis by now. As I get closer, I notice that there are people rummaging around the room until I realize that all of Tuco's stuff is being rummaged through and spread out across the ground, and I'm told to unlock my wall locker, and we also had this desk cabinet hybrid thing that I'm also told to unlock, and they start going through my stuff. Obviously, all of this is strange, but alarm bells aren't exploding in my head yet because this is the military, and the Marines especially have a fetish for fucking your personal items up. There is no, where's your search warrant? Your leader, upon the approval of your company officer or something like that, can pretty much go through your stuff at any time. In fact, there's this thing called a health and comfort inspection specifically to search your shit at random times to see if they can catch you with some of that contraband. So they thoroughly searched through our stuff, and our items are all over the floor, mixed in with each other, and while they weren't trying to be outright disrespectful, they also weren't being nice with it either. And so while strange, all of this wasn't that crazy given the context of, the Marines and all that. At this point, everyone at 29 Palms knew about the big initial LSD ring bust, and so I thought this was a random but routine inspection considering all that has been going on, not to mention that the Marines were getting busted left and right for alcohol and other contraband literally every week. They leave, we reorganize our stuff, and then I return to my holding platoon. Field day comes around, which is once a week on a Thursday evening or whatever day your unit decides, and you have to clean your barracks room up to make sure it passes inspection the following morning. The military does this because there are people who have never cleaned anything in their lives prior to enlisting, and so it is to make sure that people, clean their rooms, and so that cockroaches don't start evolving, creating battle formations and start killing Marines. The field day experience depends on 1, your ability to clean, and 2, the NCO, staff NCO officer in charge of inspecting your room. If the person inspecting is an asshole.
You want to become a fucking Marine, right? Yeah. Yeah, you wanna fucking become a Marine, right? Yeah, like, fucking everything's fucked up, right? Yeah, everything's fucked up. Hey, but thank you though.
They'll find dust and grime in the most ridiculous places and fail you. I remember I used to practically take apart my bed frame and clean every inch under the mattress just in case the dude inspecting me started getting all squirrely. If you got a chilled guy, he'll just walk into the room and glance around a little bit, maybe swipe their fingers above your cabinet to see if there's any dust, and unless there was something blatantly wrong where it was clear that you didn't even try cleaning, you were fine. Usually during field day inspections, it's one or maybe two guys checking your room. The people checking your rooms pretty much have the discretion to do whatever the hell they want, except they usually don't or aren't allowed to make you unlock your shit unless they have a specific reason. Well, that day, 3 Marines came into our room. None of them I recognized, which is already strange, and they weren't doing their usual thing of just walking around looking at stuff. Instead, they made us unlock our wall lockers and they went through our stuff again. On this particular day, we were told to stand outside the room and not come in, but I kind of stand to the side of my roommate who was right next to the door. That way I could sneak glances into the room through my main window. And sure enough, these dudes weren't just checking to see if my stuff was clean, they were once again rummaging around through both of our things. Now I'm suspicious. This would be the first and only time I was asked to unlock anything during a quote-unquote typical field day inspection. I look at my roommate and he has a stone cold face. He doesn't seem alarmed, he didn't seem surprised, almost as if he was expecting something like this to happen. So once they finish their inspection and leave, I look at Tuco and I'm like, dude, is there something going on? And Tuco says something like, they're probably just searching our stuff because of the big drug bust that happened. But as I'm walking down to where we had to go for the day, I managed to look at other rooms still being inspected and nobody else seems to have unlocked anything. I get to my platoon and ask around and nobody says they had to unlock any of their things either. In hindsight, these were all red flags, but at the time I was just like, you know what, maybe I'm just paranoid and tweaking the fuck out. The work day ends and I am talking to Tuco again and I'm more like, yo man, that's crazy, they made us unlock our stuff and nobody else had to, blah blah blah. And Tuco, he doesn't say much. I mean, he usually doesn't say much anyways, but he agrees, he nods along, and we just leave it at that. I'm willing to let things slide, but clearly there's something bigger going on. There's something wrong. It could have just been confirmation bias, but for the next few weeks, I swear to God that we were being watched specifically. I saw an abnormal amount of military police vehicles around our barracks, and sure, you can argue that if they were trying to spy on us, they would use unmarked vehicles, but regardless, I thought I was going insane. I snapped this picture of a police vehicle that was parked right outside the barracks, which you can see in the background, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating these oddly convenient police encounters. A few weeks go by and the entire time I still swear that Tuco and I are being followed and watched. Until one day after work, we hear loud banging on our doors and then we see a bunch of people in uniform telling us it's a surprise health and comfort inspection. After our formation and briefing, and this was the entire barracks complex, or at least from what I can see from my room, we also had Alpha Company up from the hill, so I don't know if they were also getting inspected. While at comm school, getting summoned for random shit or even woken up in the middle of the night for some shenanigans wasn't that uncommon. See my mass punishment video. This time it was a whole bunch of military police, or maybe they were the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS, since they also had drug dogs. We had to stand in front of our rooms and we were being carefully watched to make sure that we weren't trying to hide any last minute contraband. The search went on for a long ass time and I had nothing to hide, so I was just more so hoping to go to sleep or play some Black Ops 3 Zombies. A whole bunch of people end up getting busted for alcohol, contraband, small pet animals that they shouldn't have, propane tanks and propane accessories, and stupid stuff. When they search our room, they once again don't find anything and they keep it moving. My roommate wasn't saying shit. I've tried chatting with him about all the stuff that's been going on from suspicious vehicles and encounters, but this dude didn't want to talk about any of it, and it's not like I could strap electrodes to his balls and force him to talk either, but there was something this dude was not telling me. That following week, as I finished up whatever I had to do for the day, I would go to the chow hall, grab some food, and then head to the gym on base before returning to my barracks room for a shower. As I get closer to my room, there's a whole bunch of people standing around, and some people that I recognize come up to me and go like, bro, did you see what happened to your roommate? I have no idea what's going on. And sure enough, as I open up my room, I see that all of his shit is gone and that people are telling me this entire time that he got snatched up by military police. And that that a bunch of people had come over to my room earlier and confiscated his personal items as part of an investigation, and rumors are running wild. We have what is called the Lance Corporal Underground, or Lance Corporal Mafia, Junior Enlisted Mafia, whatever you want to call it, where all the younger Marines have their own little gossip columns and shady stuff we keep between the Junior Enlisted Marines. People are talking about Tuco like this dude was Tuco. There's people going, no, he actually killed someone in a hit and run. There's others like, nah, he got busted with bricks of cocaine, Pablo Escobar style. These are all rumors, people speculating on what happened. Obviously, everybody wants to know. We go around asking our NCOs who either tell us to fuck off or that even if they did know, they couldn't say anything since it was an open investigation. By the way, yes, I was questioned later about my roommate, but I actually didn't know shit, and I'm pretty sure they had an eye on this dude long before I got to 29 Palms, so I was never arrested or anything like that. And a few months would go by before another Marine whose brother was stationed at 29 Palms as military police would tell us what supposedly happened. Allegedly, Tuco was one of the names dropped by those already caught in the LSD drug ring, but the evidence around his involvement was very loose. So Tuco was placed on an administrative hold into a holding platoon, and they moved Tuco to my room. Again, I was in a holding platoon at that time too, out of convenience because it was close to the duty hut and so that people could keep an eye on him. Tuco had stuff he shouldn't have, but he was also smart enough to not hide it in our room. Now, I have no idea where he was actually hiding this stuff, but clearly in a clever enough place where the searchers didn't catch him. Well, apparently wherever he hid it, it was still somewhere on base because that night the drug dogs came along and the entire barracks got searched. He decided it was time to move everything he had completely off base to get the heat off of him. When he was driving out of base, and keep in mind he wasn't supposed to have a car in the first place, he was stopped by military police. I'm not a lawyer or a cop. I don't know what probable cause they had or used, or if already being under investigation while driving a technically forbidden vehicle was enough, but regardless, they caught him with a bunch of illegal items, including the forbidden LSD Big H gummies, and he got sent to the brig. When this guy was telling me about what supposedly happened, I at first didn't exactly believe him because I had numerous conversations with Tuco about my suspicions that we were being watched. Now, Tuco could have just thought I was being crazy and paranoid and not believe me, which, okay, fair enough, but you gotta be a little bit of a stupid bastard to be driving around a forbidden car full of drugs in the middle of a military base while the investigation was still hot underway. But then again, if you're dealing drugs on a military base, you probably aren't that bright either. But after this, I am now freaking out again. I was not distributing drugs or using it in any way, shape, or form, let me make that clear. But I'm thinking that this guy might try to get the heat off his back and say it's mine or something. So until I left 29 Palms, and even after, I was so paranoid that suddenly one day NCIS was going to bust down my door and take me away. In fact, I would have other Marines trying to talk to me about what happened, and I would either be like, shh, they're listening, or think the person was some sort of undercover secret agent with a wire or something like that, Sopranos style. And like I was saying, this is also one of the dumbest things I've seen in the Marines, as dealing drugs on a government installation where you can be stopped and searched at pretty much any time as long as being piss tested is crazy stupid. Kids, do not deal drugs. The moral of the story, normal Sour Patches are good enough. Don't forget to check out my civilian stories alongside my other Marine Corps Chronicles videos, or if you're in the mood for some educational content in gaming, then check out my gaming videos. But whatever you decide to do, thank you for watching, and like and sub if you wanna, and bye.